Pastor Bud. Got back from Guatemala last week. It's always real interesting. People walk up to you and they say, "Hey, how was your trip?" And it was good. And then what does that do? And then you can't really go into it because there's so many dimensions, so many aspects. And so I'm going to do my best here to do a little summary of the trip, and I'm going to shoot for 15 minutes. So that's about how long this is going to be. And if you're interested, if you prayed for us, I hope you'll hang with it. And I've got some cool things to say at the very end, some of the coolest stories. So hang with me and go with that. How was the trip? Well, first of all, we had an awesome team. I was so glad Debbie was able to go. We've really tried to get committed to her going with us every time, and that kind of is challenging on numerous fronts with life and trips and time off, but it's a blessing having her there. Dave Newman also went here from Longview. Then Bill and Lori Moore from Phoenix went with us, and it was neat to reconnect with Bill and to get to know Lori better. Then also Marianne Geniak from Houston went with us, and Marianne and I and her family have gone on trips together, but it's been a few years, and it was great to have her there, and her spiritual insight and influence was really powerful. Then we also had Joel Duarte, who is from Costa Rica, and it was awesome to reconnect with him. I hadn't been with him in a while. He's 25 years old. I'd known him since he was 16 from the conferences that we would do in Liberia, Costa Rica. He's been involved with Youth with a Mission. He's gone to Switzerland and been on teams and things there, and he's been all over Europe, and he is an awesome young man. We call him a quiet warrior, and it was just a very beautiful, powerful thing. So the team itself was really awesome. Josh Nybert was already in Guatemala. He had been there since July, and man, it was so awesome to see how the people loved him and how he loves the people. And it's going to be so interesting, his future, what God does. He has an incredible heart for the Lord and a heart for missions. He's already been to India previously, and it was neat that he could go and do that. It was obvious that Pastor Abdiel really loved him and respected him, and he had real influence there in ministry. And we just had such a beautiful time watching him and the congregation as they said goodbye to him. And I really admire Josh Nybert. He's an awesome young man. We stayed with Abdiel, Maribel, with their daughters Jennifer, Lydia, and Alejandra, and I love them so much. And they just live so sacrificially on so many fronts, and inviting us into their homes, and the girl being displaced from their rooms, and they were just so gracious. We ate so much. But the time with them was precious. That was one of the primary reasons for knowing we needed to go down on the trip, just because the demands of ministry have increased greatly upon them, upon Abdiel, upon their family, and I think sometimes they feel the weight of that. I kept our team intentionally small because I didn't want to place too much of a demand on them, and we really wanted to minister to them. But I will say they really poured themselves out and ministered to us on a wonderful level. How was the trip? One of the things that stands out to me is the ministry times. We had a teaching time Thursday night, Friday night, and Saturday night. And our primary verse was Isaiah 55:6. Seek the Lord while he may be found. Call upon him while he was near. And so I tried to limit my teachings to keep them down time-wise, so that there would be time for the people to seek the Lord. And we bought notebooks for them and pens, and so then after a teaching we would have music, and they could just spread out there in the sanctuary and have time to seek the Lord. And so many people were sitting there with their notebooks and just writing and meeting with God, and that was a beautiful, powerful thing to see the hunger in the people, the spiritual hunger. Just so wonderful, so awesome, and those times were rich. Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, and I'll come back to that a little bit later. But there's just a wonderful spirit within the church overall for really a desire to seek the Lord, to worship God. It was really awesome. All of our trips, one of the things anybody that goes with me will always say, one of our primary reasons for going is that want you to watch, and you're going to have 1 to 3 people that you connect with, that you would pray for a season. Dave and Debbie and I had already been there previously, so we had connections already. There's really about 16 people that I'm very intentional in praying for in Guatemala. There's many more that I pray to as God brings to my mind or different things happen. But there's 16 that I'm pretty committed to. And I know Debbie has a list. Dave has a list. Now I know some of the other team members have lists also. Bill and Lori and Marianne and Joel, they also have lists. But reconnecting with our list and then watching the new team members develop their list was a very powerful thing. And those prayer connections are so important to everything that we do. I believe in the power of prayer and what it means to really pray for somebody. It's one of the best gifts you can give anybody, is to say, I'm going to pray for you, and then to follow through and actually do that is very powerful. How was the trip? One of the things is just some concerns. I talked about Abdiel and wanting to go down to minister to him and his family. Abdiel is so busy. He has come to kind of a critical mass place because the church has been growing. He's so busy in what he does for fame of his name. I hope that's not the right thing, but faith comes by hearing. That's the ministry, sorry. So what he does for faith comes by hearing. He's traveling to Mexico tons. He's been to the airport like 60 times this year. He's got 3 more trips before the year ends. And then he's got a church with 750 or more people. And he is just stretched thin. And you sense that in his busyness. It's really showing in his health. There's some real health concerns that we have for him. And one of the times when I was really deciding about going on the trip, he called and talked to me and told me how, just he's feeling the weight of everything and sometimes even discouraged by it all. So really praying for Abdiel. I'm somewhat concerned for him, and I'm praying for God to give him wisdom and discernment for how to handle his situation as things have grown and developed. And I'm really praying for his health. Bill Moore, who went with us, is a physical fitness person and took down some bands and developed a workout. I took some workout stuff down last July, but it was like a video, and he would have had to go to the church to do it and a bunch of stuff, and I don't think he's been doing those workouts. So Lydia has, but I don't think Pastor Abdiel has. And so had to come up with another plan that could be more user-friendly and perhaps even more mobile. So the use of bands, and Bill went over some things for he and Maribel for their health. So praying for that. Another concern is just the leadership of the church overall. There's 10 pastors and wives, but it's all real disconnected. It's not in a real good place. And that just makes the whole thing vulnerable. And that's because Pastor Abdiel's so busy and he's gone so much. And so he's going to have God guide him to know how to reconnect really with his leadership. And this is very crucial because there's just so much going on. Serving teams are coming in. Pastor Abdiel's traveling a ton. So many things going on, but it's affecting the leadership of the church. Then it was real interesting because in the prayer connections that like I had, that Dave had, that Debbie had, as we connected back with them and began to talk to them, so many of them were struggling in their faith. And I so often think that how the leader goes, that's how the church then goes. And you could really see that because there were very few people that we talked to that were in places of strength. And they would all telling about how they're struggling and different things going on. And it just lets us know we've got to step up the prayer and that we need to see God move. Because there's awesome things going on, but you can really feel the intensity of the spiritual warfare. So the people are struggling. 3 really cool stories that are my favorite things of these kind of trips. During the prayer times and ministry times, we had some neat opportunities to pray for different people. And there was a young boy, I would say he's 8 or 9. Sometimes it's hard to know the exact ages because they're smaller people. But there's a little boy named Edgar. And when we would have the times of ministry, Edgar, God's Spirit would just really be upon Edgar. Joel really had a great time of connection and praying for him. And then I think Dave Newman also prayed for Edgar during one of those times when God's Spirit was on him. And so think about Edgar. But then it was real interesting because Edgar's older brother was there. And his older brother's probably 18 or 19. And on Monday night, his older brother pulled me aside and said, I need to tell you what God has done in my life. And he had been there basically, every night, and I would have thought it was really strong, but he said he had really been struggling severely before the conference, and that he was in darkness and not in a good place, and that he'd been very blessed coming the nights, and that he had really heard God speaking to him, and that God was telling him it was time to come out of the darkness into the light, and that he was, I don't know whether you'd say committing his life to the Lord or recommitting his life to the Lord. That was kind of hard to tell, but that his life had been changed by our nights there, and he just began to describe, the steps and the process and all that of what God had been doing. And he said, and I'm committed to living in the light. But he said, it's going to be really hard on my family as I do this. And that made it seem real interesting what he was really truly saying. And so, obviously it was going to be a challenge for him to make some changes in his life. But I know that it's really important for him to make the changes because he's the older brother to Edgar. And so I would love for Edgar to have a really awesome example of his brother, living for the Lord. And I think God has some awesome things for Edgar. So praying for that situation. Sunday morning, or it was Sunday afternoon, was the actual service. Sunday morning they had a graduation service where there were probably 1,000 to 1,200 people at the Monte Shama Church for a graduation ceremony. That was beautiful. It was powerful. But then the Sunday service at Monte Shama Church, that the actual service is always Sunday afternoon. So Sunday afternoon at 2, there were probably 750 to 800 people there. I had the opportunity to preach, and once again, along the lines of seek the Lord while he may be found, call upon him while he is near. But I also talked about being in the river of God, like from Ezekiel 47 and John 7:37 and 38, talked about the river of God and being in the river, and are you standing on the shore, are you ankle deep, knee deep, waist deep. Talked about being in the river of God, and tried to preach a shorter sermon to give a little bit more time at the end. As church was as people were arriving at Monte Shama, the entrance of the church is a 45-degree angle up the hill, and the little tuk-tuks like coming up are hilarious as they try to make it up the hill, and the busyness and the activity of 750 to 800 people arriving at church is a lot of fun to watch. And we're standing there, and a guy on a motorcycle came up the hill, and he had his little, probably 5-year-old son. And this little 5-year-old son was holding the handlebars as they came up the hill. And you could tell they probably ride around on the motorcycle a good bit. And we commented on them, the father and the son coming up the hill on the motorcycle. Well, in the worship, he ended up just sitting right across from me. So I was just cognizant of him and thinking about a dad with his son. And that's kind of ironic in itself, because usually it's the mother, and the children. The dads a lot of times are kind of absentee, especially when it comes to spiritual things. So here was no mom, but a dad and a son. And man, I was just praying for him through the service. Well, I preached the sermon, and when I got done, we offered the ministry time. And that father was one of the first ones to come up carrying his son, and just came down front and center. And when it was all said and done in the ministry time, there were probably 200 people or more pressing up to the front, and God's Spirit was really moving. It was a powerful time. But I knew I had to get to that dad and his son and pray for them. And as I got to him, he was crying, holding his son. And you could just tell that he was a dad that was wanting to be a good father, for his son. I probably felt like, just in my spirit, that he probably struggles to do that, and that he probably has struggles in his life, in being the dad that he wants to be. But hey, he's there at church with his son on Sunday, and I did get to go to him and pray for him, and you just feel the Spirit of God so powerfully right there. And I bless that young man. I bless his son even still today. I wasn't able to get his name, and that's frustrating, but just the way everything went after the service, it didn't work out, but I do pray for him. Then the last story that I'm going to share with you, and there's lots of stories, but man, this one is the one that rocks my world the most from the trip. There's been a little boy named Joao. I've known him since he was 8 or 9, and I've prayed for him. He's one of the 16 on my list. And last year we connected even more around Boom Shakalaka. And he knows that I prayed for him. We've connected on Facebook. That was hilarious when Joao came up and had a friend request to me on Facebook. And that just boggles your mind. But it's really cool because he knows I prayed for him and we have a connection. Well, on Thursday night, we went into the prayer time, the ministry time after the teaching. And I looked over, and I was hoping maybe he'd be writing. Because, man, if you write, that's just an awesome thing. But instead of writing, he was bent over the chair, and, man, he was just crying. And I went over and put my hand on his back. And, again, just one of those situations where the Holy Spirit is just all over it. And you know, you get to pray for him, and you're just putting fuel on the fire, and God's Spirit is there and moving. And it was very, very powerful. Well, as I was processing that, I thought, man, I wonder, you know, what he was thinking, what he was experiencing. So on Friday night, all of Pastor Abdiel's girls were busy, and I needed somebody to translate, so I got Joel. And you know, Joel, I admire Joel for his faith and the way that by his faith and his commitment to God, he's gone all over every place. And so I got Joel to translate as we went and got Joao. And I said, hey, Joao, I just want to know last night, what were you thinking? What were you experiencing? Like as you prayed, I could just tell the Holy Spirit was all over you, but I was kind of wondering what was going on in your mind. And Joao, just almost tearing up, goes, I could tell and know that God is calling me to take His word to the nations. Wow. Man, here's this little kid I prayed for 4 or 5 years now that I just love. And hey, I love him whatever he does. But man, for him to verbalize that and say that that's God's call on his life is just so powerful. So such a blessing. And I'm so thankful that we made the effort to go. And I appreciate those of you that prayed. I appreciate those of you who gave money to support us to go. I want to tell you next steps of what's coming up. We're going to have Pastor Abdiel and Marbell come here to Longview in January. This will be like his 5th year in a row to come here, and it's during the Crossroads Prayer Advance. It's also, there's going to be a men's retreat, and Pastor Abdiel says this is one of the most important times of the year for him every year, and it'll take about $3,000 to get the plane tickets and to host them. But I know God's going to provide. And then, and just that time with Abdiel and Marbell, so precious. And here on our turf in Longview, it's such a blessing. Then also, there's a young woman named Karen, and I saw her, first came aware of her. She was 15 years old, leading the worship at Monte Shama, which with like about 700 people. And here's a 15-year-old girl helping lead the worship, being the primary worship leader. And I've just seen God so in her heart. She came here to Longview in January. She's really pressed in to learn English, but she's not comfortable speaking it, although she knows a ton of it. She went to Costa Rica with us one year when some of the kids from Guatemala went with us there, and she prayed there. And just, man, her heart in prayer. Then when she was in Longview, we were in the prayer room. And again, to hear her heart pray there in the prayer room, and Samar, it's really connected to her. She reminds me a lot of Gretel in some ways. And we're trying to get another visa for her and to bring her here to Longview for about 6 to 8 weeks to strengthen her English. They need more translators there as more American teams are coming. She is so close, and if she could come here to the U.S. for an extended period of time, it would strengthen her English. Where our church is located here in Longview, to have her here at our church with her Spanish would be an incredible blessing, and we would find ways for her to serve here at Wesley McCabe. And so we're praying for her visa, and then we'll have to get her plane ticket and take care of everything to get her here. But we are really praying for that visa. Our next trip to Guatemala looks like it is going to be Tuesday, July the 19th. Through Tuesday, July the 27th. We've normally gone in July. This year, because of my relocation to Wesley McCabe, I couldn't go in July, and I almost didn't go at all. I'm so thankful that God did press me on and let me know I needed to go. We did. We needed to go, and it was a blessed trip. But our next trip will be next summer in July, and if God moves on your heart to go with us, that'd be awesome. It's a beautiful place, beautiful thing. Tuk-tuk rides are awesome. that's that's kind of an aside, but if you go, you have to have a tuk-tuk ride. That completes the experience. It's kind of like living in a James Bond movie if it happens right. So thank you for your prayers. You've watched this till this time, and I appreciate that. And keep praying for our ministry in Guatemala and for Monte Shama Primitiva Church, for Pastor Abdiel Maribel, and also for Fletcher Stillu's Arrows of Light ministry as well. Thanks be to God. Amen.